what are you currently listening to? Like, what's your favorite music right now?
It's going to sound like promotional, but literally I started working with them because I loved their music. All the Pretty Things, we just released a single on Wednesday called Every Now and Then, and I literally listen to it on repeat.
Amazing.
And I'm doing this because I love it so much.
I'll
Uh,
definitely check that out, to be
all
fair.
the Pretty Things is one word.
Mhm,
And on socials, it's All the Pretty Things Official.
mhm.
And I listen to that and their first song all the time. And beyond that, I usually listen to 80s stuff. I mean, 80s and 90s, like some EDM, some rock, a lot of alternative, like Depeche Mode and stuff like that. But I do listen to All the Pretty Things like regularly.
This is something that I'm always interested to hear perspective from people from the music business. Considering that music is not just your passion, but your profession as well. Do you get to a point where you can't enjoy music as a fan because you're so much overwhelmed by it through your profession? And that you're sort of, losing just losing the feel to it? Or do you manage to sort of distinguish the both things?
I don't listen to music a lot at home. I do a lot of podcast listening.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that frustrates me because I'm like, my band should be on this podcast. But, and sometimes I read a magazine and I go, oh, my band could have done that better,
Mm-hmm.
or, something like that. But consuming media is very different when you work in
Mm-hmm.
PR. Um, I read a lot of tech stuff
Mm-hmm.
because I'm very interested in technology.
Mm-hmm.
And another client of mine is an immersive audio company. So
Oh.
I read about that quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, my Spotify top songs last year
Mm-hmm.
were green noise so I could sleep.
Nice.
They're like, what kind of insomnia is this? Like, I listen to green noise every night.
Mhm.
But and I listen to a lot of retro stuff. I'm on Twitch quite a bit.
Mhm.
Twitch, I there's a lot of DJs on Twitch that I'm a fan of, and almost
Mhm.
every night of the week I would be on Twitch listening to people play stuff from like the 80s and 90s, and that was my era.
Yeah, this sounds perfect. Actually, I can definitely relate to that because one of my most listened things is also, rain sounds to when
Yeah,
I go to sleep. Yeah.
that also, like, I want to say 2021 rain, rain on the window was like my
Yeah.
most played song. So
Yeah, I can completely relate to that. You
yeah,
mentioned that you're listening to a lot of podcasts. What sort of, other topics you're interested in outside of music? I'm very
true
curious.
crime. True crime is it.
Yes. Yes.
I was listening to a podcast
Mhm.
and I heard the guy from the podcast talking about being a fan of Five Finger Death Punch at the time that I was working with Five Finger Death
Oh,
Punch.
wow.
Now I'm friends with Paul Holes, the guy that caught the Golden State Killer,
Oh, wow.
because we bonded over Five Finger Death Punch.
Oh, wow. Whoa. Okay, so this is an entirely different topic because true crime for me is, I'm so fascinated by it as well. Uh, do you, well, I, I don't even know how to formulate that exactly, but do you have a specific serial killer or case that you're most fascinated by in terms of, just following or researching or whatever the case might be?
I mean, that changes a lot. And I also listen to podcasts about con artists.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of podcasts that I listen to. I mean, I feel like everybody is interested in finding out what happened to John Benet Ramsey, but
Yes.
I mean, that's not like something I'm obsessed with. Like, the Golden State Killer case, I have read a tremendous amount about that. And it was before I became friends with Paul and after.
Wow.
And Paul's got a cool book out now too that I got to listen to. I do a lot of audiobooks. But yeah, like I listened to Last Podcast on the Left. I listened to My Favorite Murder. I listened to Scam Goddess, which is hilarious. Yeah, I mean, you know, there's a lot of comics that do some true crime stuff these days. And you know, and I enjoy it because it takes me out of my daily life.
Yes.
And I like puzzles.
Oh, puzzles. Interesting.
So, I mean, not physical puzzles, but like I like solving things.
Yeah.
So like I'll listen to like unsolved ones and then I'll think about how I would have done it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's great brain exercise.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know, you've also mentioned that you're like into anime and you mentioned comics too. Tell me a bit more about that because I'm very interested to hear your, you know, interest in that.
I have a friend who runs one of the bigger comics blogs. And she was my neighbor when I lived in Manhattan. And she recommended me to work with these people who ran regional Comic Cons because I wanted to get into that world because I'm kind of obsessed with it. I've taken my nephew to New York Comic Con since he was 3 and he's 11 now. And we go, well, the last couple of years we haven't because of the pandemic, but, you know, we would go every year and I love the comics world. It's like the world of misfits, you know?
Absolutely. So well said. Like, do you have, you know, a favorite series or like?
I am a collector. I collect Wonder Woman memorabilia.
Oh, wow.
I'll show you at the end.
Yes, please. I would love to hear that because I'm definitely not a big collector. I do have some, you know, interesting things, but I'm nowhere near that. Because I decided I don't want to go to that route because otherwise, you know, I'll need to spend everything I have on that. And
like Funko Pops, for instance, I'll only buy the bands I've worked with. So I have Stuart Copeland from The Police because I did his band Gizmodrome. I have Motley Crue because I worked with them, and I have Slipknot because I worked with them.
Oh wow. Speaking about Motley Crue, I'm jumping again. Sorry about that, but
it's okay.
I've always been so fascinated by Nikki Sixx, and you know, I've recently on the podcast I had Josie Scott from Saliva, and he was telling me so many amazing Nikki Sixx stories. Did you know? I assume you had the chance to interact with him and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning of the pandemic, he refused to learn how to use Zoom, so we had a very hard time getting interviews done.
Oh, wow.
But apparently, he's learned it and is using it now. But you know, there's always like when you're working with a band, there's always like the one person that you click with the most.
Yeah.
And with Motley, it was Tommy for me.
Okay. Yeah.
He's so joyful and like nothing like these stupid series that are made about him. Like you can't be in the same room with him and not be smiling.
Oh.
He is like a fountain of joy.
He really seems like that because I remember, you know, as younger, one of my favorite all-time TV shows was the one where he went to college or whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
He was like the best guy you want to hang around with. He was
perfect for that because he's genuine. He doesn't know how to be phony. It's just not in his makeup, you know?
Yeah.
He is genuine and lovely and wonderful, and I enjoy him so much as a person. You know, and we bonded over similar music we like. because I like EDM a lot too, and he's very into that, and now he's very into his bonsai, and he's wonderful. I'm a super fan of Tommy, like as a human being.
That's great. I mean, he really seems very natural and authentic, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And to get back to the geeky stuff, I guess. In terms of like Comic Cons and stuff like that, do you have like a situation where you've met someone that you made a really big impression on you from this world?
I met Stan Lee once, and that was pretty spectacular.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's a big one. Okay. I wasn't expecting this one.
And I was like a big fan, like fangirling out. I met William Shatner like on the phone, and I scheduled interviews for him, which was very cool too, because of course I grew up watching Star Trek.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of artists, and it's wild because Alan Robert is so into that world too.
Oh, wow.
And when he went to art school, one of his teachers was the guy that created Thor.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So we geek out about that like constantly.
Oh, wow. Wow. This is a big one. Yeah. This is a big one.
And my clients, Man with a Mission, did the theme song for My Hero Academia.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Is that them?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to work with them.
Wow. Whoa. Okay. Jesus, that's a big one. I really love that song, by the way. I've never really thought.
And what's wild is like I worked WinterCon, which was a Long Island-based mini, regional Comic-Con. I worked Big Apple Con for a couple of years, and that was crazy. And then I worked a show called Selling Heroes. It was an online television thing, and it was this guy who was a big collector. I got him in Forbes, I think, about collecting comics.
Oh, wow.
And there's so many cool things out there. I mean, the guy that owned Roadrunner also owned a book publishing company and did a lot of music related books. We did a Kanye West coloring book.
That's an interesting one.
And then there were some, biographies, and there were a bunch of books on Bob Dylan that I got in Rolling Stone, and Pantera that I got in Revolver, and I worked, of course, with Vinnie Paul, rest in peace. I think it was his birthday yesterday. He would have been 59. And I worked with him in Hell Yeah for 2 records. And we would also talk about like Comic-Con type stuff, and he was a huge Kiss fan.
Oh, wow.
So there's always something that someone is passionate about other than music that can put them in a space where they're the only ones, like they're the only musician talking about fishing.
And
I remember Tom in Hell Yeah was a big bass fishing fan.
Wow.
And Bass Fisherman magazine took them out on a lake when they went through on tour.
That's such a good and interesting angle, by the way,
and you might be the only guy who is an authority on cigars that is in a rock band. You might be the only guy who knows a lot about anime who's in a rock band, and it's like, that's how you put somebody in a place where they can get more attention.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very good angle.
I sent Paul Holes to Escape the Fates show, and I was like, please take a picture with them, and I'll put it, I don't even think he got there backstage or anything. But yeah, and I'm like, all the true crime people will flip out,